And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Sunday, September 17th, 2023. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide in this YouTube broadcast, you can go to weather.gov. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S. You point and click anywhere on this map, including these maps for Hawaii, Alaska, and then tabs to the U.S. territories. It'll bring you forecast and any relevant watches and warnings for any location in the country. Looking at the weather map this Sunday afternoon, the most notable things to point out are we have red flag warnings for high fire danger in Louisiana around Lake Charles, where temperatures are at 95 degrees, dry, hot conditions there. Breezy, dry, hot conditions in parts of Montana back toward Washington state. Temperatures mid-80s to lower 90s with breezy conditions enhancing the fire danger, and these darker areas of gray indicate air quality issues. But here in Alaska, relatively quiet weather going on. We have a stronger low that's slowly filling here in the Gulf right now. That's brought some storm force winds in some areas of the Gulf, but otherwise the Kenai River, which had some flooding problems because of two glacier dam release. One, the Snow Glacier in Kenai Lake, and another one, the Ski Lac Glacier that feeds into Ski Lac Lake, released and caused flooding. Well, the good news is those flood warnings and advisories have been discontinued. They've been allowed to expire, and the river will continue to slowly recede early this week, especially the middle river below Ski Lac Lake. So keep that in mind. The water levels are still going to be on the higher side for a little while. But another thing, Shoshaden volcano erupted Friday, sending a plume of ash and as high as 42,000 feet. Since then, it's simmered down, quieter conditions, so lower activity. So far, no signs of any additional significant eruptions there. And coming up in the week ahead, late Friday evening, the autumnal equinox, that is the astronomical arrival of fall. That's that point in the Earth's orbit where we have near equal day and night. And then overall, the weather pattern here in Alaska will coincide with the fall season. Near normal early fall pattern will likely continue mid through late month. And looking at the river gauge, the hydrograph of the river gauge below Ski Lake on the Kenai River shows the flood peak occurred at 15.2 feet early on Wednesday. Since then, it has been steadily dropping through the weekend, and now we're out of minor flood stage and action stage, so that's why the warnings have been allowed to expire. So look for the river there, Kenai River below Ski Lac Lake down through Sterling and even Soldotna to gradually fall here in the week ahead. Looking at a couple of the FAA webcams, we have four dead horse along the Arctic coast, Beaufort Sea, some lower cloud cover, breezy conditions. Northeast winds have been up around 20-25 miles an hour with temperatures only in the upper 30s. In the far northern panhandle, Skagway, some rain, low clouds, fog, these ragged ceilings down in through the valley with a temperature at 50 degrees. And coming up in the week ahead, the autumnal equinox for the northern hemisphere is on Friday, September 22nd. And that'll occur at 10:50 p.m. Alaska Daylight Time. That's when the sun is directly over the equator, that point in the Earth's orbit. Here's a beautiful shot. Took this last year in the Kenai River, catching some of the fall colors in September. And looking at the satellite imagery, we are looking at a low circulating here in the northeastern Gulf. It has gale and even some storm force winds around it, especially out here, the open waters and coming in that area, Kamishak Bay into the entrance of Cook Inlet. Winds gusted as high as 59 miles an hour at Kodiak City. And there's been some sunshine there this afternoon, though rather breezy conditions. Areas of rain and rain showers pushing into the panhandle along the northeastern Gulf, and then, of course, snow in the higher elevations of the intercoastal mountains. And we have some pockets of rain and showers extending back into the interior with a little cooler temperatures than what we've seen, though. Fair amount of sunshine, clear skies here along areas of the southwest from Nome down through Bethel and Dillingham. Putting the satellite into motion, though, there's another low pressure here south of Dutch Harbor and Sand Point. That's going to take a similar track as the current low, but not be as strong. And yet another low back out here off of Kamchatka into the far southwestern corner of the Bering Sea will be moving into the central Bering. And then coming up toward Bristol Bay on Tuesday afternoon, but then also secondary development of a low happening on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, which is pretty typical. So looking at the weather map, I superimposed the fronts and low pressure systems on top of the satellite imagery this Sunday afternoon. We have a 982 low that is filling. It was as low as down around 969 millibars in the past 24 hours, so it is gradually weakening. We have the next low that's going to take a similar track. Another low back out here toward the western Bering, moving toward the central Bering, and then a weak low sitting up here just north of Kotzebue Sound around Kivalina. This low features just kind of cooler, unstable conditions here across the northwest part of the state early in the week. And looking late tonight into Monday morning, the low in the northeastern Gulf continues to weaken, the occluded front just kind of weakening to a trough. We have the next low in wake south of Kodiak Island moving up into the Gulf, and then another low moving into the central Bering early Monday morning, and then still that low sitting up there in the northwest. And by Monday afternoon, here's that low moving up into the central Gulf, though not as deep as the previous one that's currently happening there. And also we still have a weak low sitting back up here in the same area right above Kivalina, along areas of the northwest, and then the low back out here toward the central Bering. And by Tuesday afternoon, the low in the central Bering works its way eastward toward Bristol Bay. Secondary development will occur south of the Alaska Peninsula in the North Pacific, and another weak low will be pulling up into the Gulf here as we head into midweek. Otherwise, a ridge of high pressure may actually bring some sunshine and a little clearing along the Alcan border in the upper Yukon Valley around the 40-mile gold country, but still back toward the northwest. We still have kind of an unstable trough of low pressure that just keeps some cloudiness, some light precipitation, and cooler temperatures going. Low temperatures this Sunday night into Monday morning, mid-upper 40s for the Panhandle. You're going to see some 30s showing up here, Copper River Basin up toward Talkeetna, maybe even around Soldotna. Otherwise, temperatures Monday afternoon will generally be in the 50s across much of the area, mid-50s, pretty common region-wide. Tuesday morning could be a bit cooler. Any breaks in the clouds this time of year cool off pretty quickly. Could be down a bit below freezing at Talkeetna, Glen Ellen there in the upper Copper River Basin. And then also we are looking for some 30s scattered about areas of south central with the exception along the coast, and in the mid-upper 40s throughout the Panhandle. And temperatures on Tuesday afternoon, a little cooler here back out towards south central, lower 50s or so, but 50s, a few 60s possible, perhaps around 60 at Skagway and down toward Craig. Across the far north and interior, we're looking for lows in the 30s to near 40 degrees. But again, any breaks in the clouds could lead to temperatures at or below freezing. And then Monday afternoon, high temperatures, generally mid-upper 30s along the Arctic coast, 40s through the Seward Peninsula on up the Yukon Valley, so not quite as warm as it was around the Yukon Flats and Alcan border. Tuesday morning lows, temperatures, going to start to see some below freezing readings along the Brooks Range and north side there of the Alaska Range, maybe around Healy and those areas if you can get some breaks in the clouds. Otherwise, 30s common extending back toward the Seward Peninsula. And then temperatures Tuesday afternoon, looking for readings upper 30s to lower 40s along the Arctic coast, still generally in the 30s along the Brooks Range, lower 40s, Shishmaref and Nome, and then as we go up the Yukon Valley, Galena on up toward Tanana, looking at mid-40s, maybe near 50 still at Fort Yukon, and then across the southwest interior, lows mid and upper 30s Sunday night into Monday morning, lower mid-40s along the Alaska Peninsula, trailing out into the eastern Aleutians. Temperatures Monday afternoon will be confined probably to not much more than 50 at best at Bethel. Some 50s, lower mid-50s along the Alaska Peninsula, as warm as 58 there at Kodiak City. And then for Tuesday morning lows, look for upper 30s to near 40 degrees in the southwest interior, and then in the mid and upper 40s along the Alaska Peninsula from Chiknik back on down through Dutch Harbor into the central Aleutians. And then temperatures Tuesday afternoon will be in the mid-40s to around 50 degrees, lower Yukon, Kuskokwim basins. And then mid-50s along the Alaska Peninsula back toward the eastern Aleutians. The extended temperature outlook from just past the equinox, September 23rd, that's Saturday next weekend into the following week. Temperatures are expected to average near normal across much of the state of Alaska, maybe slightly above normal in the far northeast and areas of the southern Panhandle. And then precipitation also near normal across much of the mainland, southwest, as well as the southeast panhandle, with maybe just a slight tick below normal there across the areas of the Brooks Range, including the eastern part of the North Slope and the central eastern Arctic coast.